Well, good morning. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the State Water Resources Control Board's Water Quality Fee Stakeholder Meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through the Zoom and webcast platforms and also is being recorded. My name is David Ceccarelli. I'm the Fee and Revenue Branch Chief within the Division of Administrative Services. Today, we have many of the Fee and Revenue Branch staff working behind the scenes to ensure that this meeting runs as smoothly as possible. If any time throughout the event you find that you're having any technical difficulties, please email feebranch@waterboards.ca.gov. And that's the email on the agenda, and it's also currently on the home screen. Also joining us today is John Russell, Deputy Director of the Division of Administrative Services. Assisting me today also with the presentation is Cassandra White, the Staff Service Manager 2 in the Fee Revenue Branch. Individuals attending via Zoom, please use the raise the hand function if you'd like to ask a question or provide a comment. If you are joining through the webcast, you can also submit a comment or ask a question by emailing us. In the past, there have been some delays in the broadcast through the webcast. Therefore, through the meeting, staff may pause so the broadcast can catch up to the listeners. Again, we thank you for joining us virtually today. We thank you for your patience as we move to this 100% virtual meeting space. We're doing our best to ensure everyone can participate in an effective way. So let's go over just some meeting guidelines. One, remember to use the handouts that were sent to you via email. If you do not have the handouts, don't worry. We'll be sharing the documents on the screen. You could also request a copy of documents after the meeting, or the handouts are posted on the Water Board's fee webpage. Remember, at any time you have any technical difficulties, please don't hesitate to email us. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Remember, you can submit comments and questions throughout the event by also emailing us. For the meeting to run efficiently and stay on track, we're requesting each participant who wants to ask a question to please ask one question at a time. I understand you may have a clarifying question to your original question, and that is acceptable. Once your question is fully answered, we're going to move on to the next participant's question, and you will be put back into the order of participants who are requesting to ask a question. In addition, we respect all opinions and input. However, if the discussion starts to move away from the intent of the meeting, which is to discuss the water quality fees, then I am going to ask that the participant and I meet offline to coordinate these discussions further and involve the appropriate staff as needed. So at this time, let's go ahead and just review the agenda. Item number 2, after the, of course, the introductions here, are the Waste Discharge Permit Fund Condition Statement, which is attachment 1. So we'll review that. We'll review the budget cost drivers, which is attachment 2. And then we'll go over, there's, of course, the budget change proposals that are part of the budget cost drivers. And those are both hyperlinked, so they will link you directly to the BCPs. One is the water supply strategy implementation, and the second is the Division of Administrative Services support. Attachment 3, which is item 4, is the Waste Discharge Permit Fund Program Budget Detail. And then item number 5 is a potential fee change, which is the MPDS Stormwater Industrial Tier Fee Schedule. And then item 6 will be open discussion. And then we'll move on to item 7, which will be next steps in the water quality fee process. So at this point, let me introduce you to John Russell, the Deputy Director of Division of Administrative Services, for any opening statements.
Hello, everybody. As usual, I just wanted to say, if you have any questions after this that you don't get a chance to ask, or anything that you think of after this meeting, don't hesitate to contact either myself or David or any of our staff, and we can get you the answer to that. But beyond that, I just wanted to thank you all for participating in this meeting today. I know it does take up a little bit of your time, and we do appreciate all the input that we get. So with that, I will hand it back over to David.
Thank you, John. So let's move over to item number 2, which is the Waste Discharge Permit Fund condition. I'm going to take this on here. We, at our last meeting in March, it was one of the first times that we were able to basically kind of break down our fund condition and display it. And so I wanted to just kind of walk through one more time here. And there is one slight adjustment that's been made on this fund condition statement. And so as I'm looking at where we stand for fiscal year 22-23 forecast, I show a beginning balance of 6 million. And this 6 million comes from basically the carryover that gets moved up from 21-22, which was the program ending balance. And so we're projecting to collect roughly around 178 million in fee revenue. And when you add other revenue to that, again, we're about 178.2. The one adjustment at this point is we're projecting that our state operations expenditures will be roughly about 160 million. Now, prior, this number was a budgeted number. And so as of now, our internal accounting office, we've closed the books, reported about 6 months of data. So from July to December, we have actual expenditure information. And so just basically on some prorations and some projecting out what our expenditures should come in for the next following 6 months, which is again, January through June. I'm projecting that our internal state operations will be about 160 million, which then shows our total program expenditures to be about 174.8 million. Of course, this includes all the other state operations and the local assistance, which brings our reserve to about 5.3%. Of course, we're trying to drive to, a 5% reserve. And so what the next two columns are 23-24. If we didn't do any fee changes, you would see that this fund would go into the negative, and we'd have a structural deficit of about $9.8 million. And so as we move into some more of the budget details here in some of the next slides, we're showing that we're going to need about 187.9 million in revenue to cover our cost, and ending in a 5% reserve. So basically what's happening is I am able to use, it's not much, but it's like 0.3% that I'm using revenue kind of spread off through to the fee programs. And that'll be illustrated in another slide chart here that we'll go over here in just in a moment. But again, one of just the major changes that based on this compared to, again, the spreadsheet that was shown in March is that I'm illustrating this 160 million as more of a projected expenditures other than the budgeted number. And then the bottom portion here, which I discussed last time, has to do with our fines and penalties revenue. And so, and of course, the fines and penalties revenue has to be appropriated by the legislature for us to use. And so we earmarked this revenue. It's in the fund. But again, the reason that we show basically kind of two different charts is that one is, of course, the fee revenue that's used to support our, water quality core regulatory programs. And then the fee and the fines and penalty revenue, which is revenue is deposited into the WDPF, we track separately. And so this is the portion here that's being tracked separately. So before we move on to the next item, are there any questions on the fund condition at this point?
I have a question.
Yes.
I
Is this Noel?
think it was Sarah.
Sarah. Okay, I'm sorry. Sarah, go ahead and you'll be the first to ask a question. Good morning.
Good morning. And sorry if I jumped the line. It sounded like there was just a long pause. Okay, just simple question. And sorry if I'm just not following something. I was just looking at kind of the state whoops, it was the previous slide, the fund conditions statement that I was following the expenditures from fiscal year 17-18 up through fiscal year 23-24.
Yes.
And there, I haven't figured out the exact percentage increase per year, but it's more than 3%. So is that a reflection? It seems like it's more than standard inflation rate. So is that a reflection of like the scope of work for the operations increasing, or just can you give us a little bit of context for that?
Well, yes. I mean, normally we notice that just our regular costs go up anywhere between maybe 4 to 6% every year. It has to do with, of course, employee compensation, retirement, healthcare costs. So that is one of the drivers. Then also, throughout the years, if there were any approved budget change proposals in any of these given years, that would also then adjust our cost. What you're also seeing on here also though are the actual expenditures, right? And so in 23-24, those two numbers are, our total budgeted expenditures, right? And so, and then throughout, a year that goes by, of course, if there's, vacancies and some savings and things like that, then we normally see our expenditures lower than the actual budgeted number. And so that's what I'm trying to true up at this point for fiscal year 22-23 is reflecting more of just what our actual or our projected expenditures are going to look like, which are about 160 million at this point, based on first 6 months of expenditure data. So yes, there is growth in the program, definitely. But again, it's basically drives between our normal cost drivers, and then if there are approved budget change proposals that come into the program each year.
Thank you.
I think Noel is next.
Thanks, David. On the 498 for fiscal year 21-22, the revenue transfer there. So
Yes.
Is that, I was trying to, you asked for questions while I was frantically looking up the code there mentioned. So that's just a repayment of a loan for employee retirement. Is that correct?
That was correct. Each of our funds had to, the way it worked was Department of Finance came in, they basically took some money out of the general fund, and it not just affected this fund, it affected water rights fund, the safe drinking water account, many of our funds and throughout the organization. So the money was put in, and then this is just the money being taken out and being repaid back to the general fund.
And is that like a one-time? Obviously you can't like forecast forever, but is that just one time, or is that going to be an ongoing repayment that has to happen?
From my understanding, it was just a one-time thing in that fiscal year.
Okay, thanks.
Hey,
David,
good morning,
Bruce.
Bruce. I think you're next.
Thank you. A general basic question. In past years, it's been challenging to get accurate information out of Fiscal. Can you comment on how accurate the information you're now getting out of Fiscal is?
I would say it's extremely accurate. It's getting more user friendly. what you see between 17-18 and 21-22, those are actual numbers. And so those wouldn't change. And now with the forecast for 22-23, our accounting staff is I guess say more prepared, more experienced, working with fiscal, and being able to pull reports quicker and more efficient for us. And so we're in June right now. Of course, the fiscal year ends in June 30th. And they're pretty much in line with closing the books for us in the next few months, which is basically being, how we were back in CalSTARS days. And so the internal reports that I've been getting, which basically shows, expenditures by the fund and expenditures by program, are spot on. And so it definitely puts us in a better, as staff, better prepared, especially for these type of meetings, and for us to be able to, evaluate our funds and being able to then evaluate the fee structures based on, if there's sufficient revenue to cover our costs, of course. And so, yes, they made a lot of headway basically to get us where we're at right now. So,
yeah, great. It sounds like they're not as far behind as they were in maybe 1920, 2021, right? So
correct.
Yeah,
have a
David, that's
sense
just
of-
to clarify, and Bruce, what the data that we've gotten out of Fiscal has always been accurate, but like Bruce said, it's just the currency of the data that we were getting. Before we were, a year, 2 years behind. Now we are about 2 or 3 or 4 months behind, and we'll catch up and catch up as current as we can be, probably by August or so. So the data that you're
Thanks,
looking at
John,
here,
for putting that context around it. That's really helpful.
yeah. So the data you're seeing here is pretty. I mean, it's current for last year, and then we're about half to 2/3 through the current fiscal year, and like I said, we'll be caught up here pretty soon.
Hey, Bob, I think you're next. Good morning.
Thanks, David. Good morning to everyone. You've mentioned the fatal words BCP. The Water Resilience BCP has a line in it, and as I've testified to all the legislative committees, budget subs, the description from the Water Board is the BCP is for statewide critical water needs. So if this is a statewide BCP, then it is inappropriate for the fee payers to bear any of the costs. This should be general fund. And it might behoove the Water Board staff to go to the board and say, yeah, fee payers are, this is easy. They're the default HOD carriers for this. But, we've described this as a statewide program. Golly, and I fully understand the state of the general fund, believe me. But water resilience is important to the governor. He's pushing through right now a package that he just this morning told stakeholders has to be put through as a package. So it would seem we have some leverage in there to fund his water resilience package, which apparently is driving the year-over-year costs of this program up 9% on the general fund. I would, in closing, ask that for the August meeting, we get, as we have a couple of times in the past, a chart that shows where this money is going to be spent, all program growth, in terms of PYs, by positions, by the 8 programs. So in other words, irrigated lands is going up X% because we're adding 13 PYs that include engineers, scientists, whatever. It would be nice to know where our money is being spent specifically. It would also be good to have somebody from water quality on this call, which is, as you can tell, a bit frustrating since it's not up to you to answer any of the topics I've raised. Thanks for listening.
Let's move to the next item here, and which is the budget cost drivers. I'm going to pass this on to Cassandra. Cassandra's going to walk us through the budget cost drivers here.
Good morning. So as we take a look at the WDPF budget cost drivers, on the first table, we see that the fee setting budget from fiscal year 22-23 was about $173 million. And it's followed by the May revised fee setting budget for fiscal year 23-24. And as David mentioned in review of the fund condition, it has decreased slightly due to expenditures, and it's now about $188.1 million. It's a net difference of about $15.4 million and just at 8.9%. And the second table shows the primary cost drivers that supports the net difference. And the first one is state operations. And it has decreased from the March stakeholder meeting to currently about 8.48% and just under 5% at 4.9%. It's primarily made up of employee compensation, salaries, healthcare, retirement, and it does reflect a decreased continuation of the cannabis program. The second cost driver is pro rata. It has not changed from the March stakeholder meeting, and it's at approximately 1.4% and just under, 1.4 million, just under 1% increase. And the final cost driver categories are the BCPs. The first one is the water supply strategy implementation. It was introduced in the January 10 budget, and we talked about it in the March stakeholder meeting. The 4.7 million will provide 19 positions and one-time contract cost of $500,000. And that funding will be split pretty much 50-50 between two WDPF programs, the Waste Discharge Requirement Program and the NPDES Wastewater Program. And the second fiscal year, there will be another additional 9 positions, 7 of which will be charged to the WDPF program, but 5 of those 7s will be appropriated to the stormwater program. And there will also be another $500,000 in one-time costs. And 2 of those 9 positions will be for $408,000, and they will be allotted to the Safe Drinking Water Account program. And then finally, when we get to the third fiscal year, 25-26, there will be ongoing authority put in place of $6.1 million. And the waste discharge permit fund portion of that is about $5.7 million. And it will help to continue to support the 28 permanent positions. And the next BCP that we have, this is new as of the May revise, and it's the Division of Administrative Services Support BCP, which provides about $2.3 million in continuous funding from various special funds for about 15 permanent positions. The WDPF portion is $849,000. The resources will be used to address increased administrative workload due to rapid and evolving program growth, increased resource management and tracking workload, and reporting requirements of the Division of Administrative Services. For more BCP information, you can refer to the Department of Finance, and a direct link to each BCP has been provided in this handout today. And that concludes our look at the WDPF cost drivers. Are there any questions? Yes, Noel.
Thanks, Cassandra. So did I hear you correctly for the water supply strategy implementation that is split between fee payers who are subject to WDR fees and those that are subject to MPDES stormwater fees?
MPGS wastewater for the first year, and during the second year, there will be 5 positions that will be allocated to the stormwater program.
Oh, the first year it's between wastewater and WDR. The
Correct.
second year, WDR continues, but then it's stormwater who pays. Is that?
Wastewater continues, and then there'll be additional 5 positions that will go to stormwater.
Okay. I have to kind of, I want to just reiterate the points that Bob made earlier on. This is a statewide program to benefit all Californians. And I mean, for my members, they will be subject to covering the cost of this program through their WDR fees and their stormwater fees. So they actually get to pay twice for this, even though it's benefiting the entire state. So I know that's not your role, but it would just be valuable for the state board to carry that message. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Well, then let's go ahead and move to the next item. So here is the budget detail for the waste discharge permit fund. It's broken down basically. Here are all the water quality programs in column A. Column B is basically our fee setting budget for 23-24, which again is about $188 million. Under our current fee structure, if again we weren't to change any fees, just using our current fee structure, we're anticipating generating about $178 million in fees. So there's a net difference of about 10 million there. So we're trying to drive to, again, our total adjusted revenue is 188,053. However, again, I mentioned kind of in the fund condition that, we're trying to drive to a 5% reserve. So when we're driving to a 5% reserve, the number is actually less than the 188 million. It's 187,950. So not about 100,000 there, difference there. Excuse me. So there's moving to column G. Basically, G shows the net differences between the two programs. Between the revenues and expenditures. And so, as we kind of mentioned earlier, what's really driving the cost for WDR and the MPD's wastewater programs, and you're seeing a 9% average program percentage change, is of course the water resilience BCP and those costs that are into that program. Land disposal, at this point, we're not anticipating any fee increases, basically because revenue is covering their cost. We, again, as I kind of mentioned in the March meeting, we're continuing to really evaluate the 401 SWRCB program. We do have a internal task force that's looking at this program. We understand that they've had multiple increases over the last several years. And so they are looking at the current structure and doing evaluation on all of the permits and the fees that are associated with those permits, along with the expenditures and how a program is charging. So we are evaluating that program. And not for this given fiscal year, but if we need to make, when I say this given fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year, as we move into 24-25, if we need to make adjustments to the structure for the 401 cert, staff may be proposing something. CAF and ag lands are roughly 6%. And then the cannabis program is about a 15% increase. As we mentioned, there was a cannabis BCP. And as part of that BCP, they realigned the program where they funded many of the positions that are originally funded through the WDPF to the cannabis tax fund. So they realigned that, but they also, the BCP is also allocating 6 new positions, which are being spread out over a 3-year span. And so in fiscal year 23-24, there are 2 new positions. So the 15% is basically covering our share of those 2 new positions that are coming into the cannabis program. And then in the MPDS stormwater program, revenue is exceeding expenditures, although lower than what we had anticipated in the March meeting. And so as a result, staff is going to propose no fee increases for the stormwater program under the current structure as it lies right now. Bob, I'll open it up to you for first question on this document.
Forgive me, and thank you again. This is an informative comment on ag lands. Karen Ross, the secretary of CDFA, has opened the project, her BCP, and she's working with the water board, as you may know, to examine how their new portal can reduce the cost of compliance. And here's what she told the board, which should help us. And I'll be sure and let Brianna know since they're not on this call. She said, this is a direct quote, "Please map out the conflicts and duplications in regulations. Remember, regulations are additive over time. Reducing farmers' paperwork may not be as sexy as accelerating land conservation, but it is essential." So we'll go to work on that. And I'd like you in particular, that is the Division of Administration, to be aware that the per acre fee is going to have to go up because the number of acres under cultivation are declining. So we do need to study that. And I'm sure the board is aware. Thanks.
Thank you, Bo. So I did not see any email questions at this point. Bruce, you have your hand up? Good morning.
Yeah, just make sure I understand completely. So under the irrigated lands program, the average program percentage increase is 6%. That 6% includes the 5% reserve. If the 5% reserve were not there, it would be a 1% increase. Is my math accurate there?
So yes, the 6% includes each of these programs driving to the fund to maintain a 5% reserve.
Great. And then this goes back to earlier slides. So local assistance, the footnote under local assistance is about beach monitoring. That's not my question. Let me see if I can get my question formed here. Water board state operations and other state operations. Can you tell me, and this is maybe a Cassandra question, right? Because it goes to the slide where she broke it down. Why are there 2 different, why are they not in the same category? What's the difference between the BCP for the Division of Administrative Support and the state operations? There, I formed a question.
Well, let me take a stab at it here first. So you're right. So the BCPs, if they are approved, they are all basically state operations. I don't think there's any like contract funding in there, but yes, they become they do become all state operations. So so we're just splitting them up. The first item of state operations, which shows 8.4 million, is basically just showing the cost of the existing positions going up, based on, again, you know, all those control sections as mentioned earlier with employee comp, retirement, healthcare. And then we're breaking out two proposals, and they're proposals at this point. They're not in the governor's budget. Excuse me. Well, they're not approved in the Budget Act. But eventually, if they do, then they do become part of the overall state operations. Does that make sense, Bruce?
Yeah, no, and then on state operations, the footnote just mentions retirement. Does that also include what is known as OPEB, other post-employment benefits? Is that included in there? So once an employee retires, they're entitled to post-employee benefits. Is that included in there?
I believe so. I'm not fully, I know what I think I know what you're getting at. You know, I'm just kind of looking at the total retirement cost when we get that hits the WDPF. Within there, I think it does include what you're talking about. I don't know, John, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you're right. I think the retirement does include OPEB, and retirement's just a blanket term that rolls everything in. So any post-retirement benefits that people get, it's all rolled into retirement.
So just to, you know, recap the budget detail slide, which if you want to move down to the next slide here. So at this point, H is kind of where we're landing on, you know, potential fee adjustments for the WDPF in each of the programs. We don't anticipate any changes from now to when the budget is signed. However, if there are, that's what we, you know, the August meeting will have those discussions. So this is again where we land with the May revise, and so kind of running the numbers. We'll continue to evaluate again our internal expenditures and revenues. So we'll be updating our fund conditions as appropriate with the information that we get. And so we'll be able to, you know, display those and make those adjustments and have, again, better updated information when we come to the August meeting. So let's move to the next item. Give us a moment here as we load it. So our next item, we're going to be discussing a potential change to the industrial general permit fee structure for stormwater. And Patrick from the Division of Water Quality is joining us, and he's going to kind of go over a few slides here, which is going to talk a little bit about the background. And then I will jump in a minute and talk about the couple of options that staff is proposing. Just a little background. Last week, we did have a subgroup of several stakeholders that are representing the industrial facilities. And so we did have some further discussion and kind of introduce these options. And as Patrick gets into this, we actually had some discussions several years ago on this. And we were just kind of discussing the point of gathering the information that we needed to evaluate us if we needed to make any changes to this program. So with that said, let me pass it over to Patrick. And then I'll let Patrick go ahead and introduce this item.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Otsuji, and I work in the stormwater program at the State Water Board. And as Dave mentioned, I'm here to kind of give a brief background of the proposed change to the stormwater industrial general permit annual fees. I apologize. I tried to turn on my camera, but I'm having a problem. So you won't be able to see me via camera. So back in 2015, the State Water Board was approached to discuss the industrial general permit notice of intent fee could be modified to be more equitable. As you know, or some of you may know, the industrial general permit NOIC, which is currently $1,738, has been a single flat fee for all dischargers. During these discussions, the State Water Board had one criteria in developing a new fee, which is the formula must not be complex. Next slide, please. These are some of the ideas discussed in the meeting and determined to be not feasible because the State Water Board did not collect the data or could not be equitably implemented. Threatened complexity is geared towards major MPDS dischargers and doesn't really translate to stormwater industrial general permittees. For fees by standard industrial classification codes, the question was, how would we determine which SIC code pays more and which ones pay less? The idea of looking at the history of violations and enforcement is bad actors would pay more or good actors would pay less, but not all facilities are frequently inspected to make that determination. The number of employees or staff and facility revenue isn't necessarily indicative of the facility's impact to water quality, nor does the State Water Board currently collect this data. Facility size was an issue because some facilities could have a large footprint and may not have the same revenue as a smaller facility or comparable industrial activities. Next slide, please. What staff proposed is to develop a fee similar to the construction general permit field for totally disturbed acreage. For the industrial general permit, a new field was added to the notice of intent application, asking for the total area of industrial activity exposed to stormwater. And that's the definition you see on screen. The thought behind this field is the larger the area of industrial activities, the larger threat to water quality, and the more time it will take a regional board staff person to perform an inspection. Using the data from this field, the State Water Board fee branch staff developed several tiered feed options and presented it to this discharger group. Because the State Water Board industrial fee is a zero-sum game, where fees are reduced for smaller facilities, fees must be increased for larger facilities. While the larger facilities were willing to pay a little more, they did not want to pay a significant amount more, and thus no decisions were made on various tiered feed options at the time. With the governor signing Senate Bill 205, more businesses applied for permit coverage, and naturally the state and regional water boards received many complaints about the cost of the program. For those not familiar with SB 205, this bill is intended to identify the industrial general permit non-filers through the business licensing process. The state and regional water board staff heard those complaints and decided it was time to revisit the possibility of a tiered fee. In 2021, all active dischargers were asked to verify and or update the total area of industrial activities exposed to stormwater. With the updated data, the State Water Board fee branch staff revised the tier fee options, which they are going to discuss today, and solicit your feedback. While there is no perfect solution, the intent is not to rock the boat too much. We hope by adopting one of the tiered feed options as a start, and as the data normalizes from dischargers updating their area of industrial activities, staff will continue to refine the tiered fee in future years. Before I pass the presentation back to the fee branch staff, does anyone have any questions on this background?
Noelle, I think you had a question for Patrick.
Yes, thanks. And Patrick, sorry I missed the meeting. last week, and I know some of my members joined, but I had a question on the determination of the size, because I know a number of my members have, like, the size that they report now applies to the entire property versus just the portion impacted by the industrial portion impacted by stormwater. Can you explain a little bit further about how the process that the water board will go through to work with current permit holders to make sure that their size being reported is just the industrial portion versus the entire property?
Sure, yeah. If this proposed tiered fee is adopted, what we'll do is contact all the active dischargers, likely via email, saying, hey, the new fee new fee policy has been adopted. It's going to be based on this field, the total area of industrial activity exposed to stormwater. Give them the definition so that they hopefully will read it and understand, and then go into the system, smart system, and update the acreage amount. The process to do that will be via change of information. So it might be a little bit of load for the regional water boards and state water boards to approve all those COIs. But that'll basically be the process.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Patrick. If you want to pull up the couple of options, and then we'll have this discussion here. It might take a moment here. So thank you. So we actually have three options on the table. And so let me just refer to as option 3 as the current fee structure, which basically means we wouldn't take a change to the board, and we'd keep the current structure. So the current fee, it's a flat fee and everyone pays it. It's $1,738, depending on whatever your size is. And so what, and the other key principle here with both of these options is that we wanted to make it revenue neutral. So right now we have 8,745 permit holders that are paying fees to us, and we're collecting basically 15.2 million in fee revenue. And so our goal again was to develop a structure, and again, that's revenue neutral. We're not trying to collect any more, we're not trying to collect any less. So we're trying to drive to that 15.2 million. So basically option 1 is just basically adjusting the fee structure by 5%. So we've come up with a tier structure. So if you're from 0 to less than 1 acre, your fee would be $1,651, which is basically a 5% decrease in your current fee. And then in the middle range there, we came up with a structure of 1 to less than 5 acres, which would impact about 37% of the facilities, and your fee would go from, again, the current 1,738 to 1,673, which is basically about a 4% change. And then 5 or more acres, which is over 4,000 facilities, then their fees would go from 1,738 to $1,818, which is a little less than $100, but it is a 5% change. So we're kind of referring to option 1 as basically the 5% adjustment. So we're trying to give a little bit of relief to some of the smaller facilities, and then on the larger side for those facilities with 5 or more acres, their fees would be adjusted by 5%. Again, when you look at the net difference, though, we're still collecting roughly 15.2 million. And so option 2 is basically doing the same as option 1, but we made the difference 10%. So we have a 10% adjustment. So those fees on the lower end between 0 and 1 acre would go down 10%. Those on the higher side of 5 or more acres would go up 10%. And then just the numbers the way they work is those that are in the middle would go down about 8%. And so those are two of the options that staff are, kind of looking into and kind of evaluating. Again, the third option, of course, is just keep the fees the way they are. What we've asked our subgroup and anyone here also on the meeting, if you'd like to provide any comments, we're asking that comments be sent to the fee staff by June 23rd, which is a Friday, which is basically 2 weeks away. And we'll take a look at those comments and then kind of evaluate if staff is going to put together a proposal and bring to the board. Now it's important though, I think also mentioned, because it was kind of brought up earlier through Patrick, and kind of part of what Noel's question was, is as we put this structure in place and then we start to see maybe some of the permit holders maybe move around, maybe into different categories, then as the upcoming years go forward, we may need to make adjustments to, of course, the fee amounts. We don't anticipate huge swings, but anytime we put into any type of tier structures and then the population moves maybe from one tier to the other, it could impact, of course, it does impact the facility sizes and the populations, and of course the fees themselves and the total fee revenue. So it is one thing that anytime we do move into a tier structure, that we do have to evaluate it based on the input and the information that's being provided to us from the permit holders. So I definitely kind of do want to mention that, but that will, again, we'll have to, of course, be evaluating that on a year-to-year basis. And one other thing also, I just wanted them to add here, as the earlier proposal, not proposal, but as the budget details state that, we're not proposing to increase fees for stormwater. That is true. However, if we do implement this structure, there would be one area that would go up, right? You'd have those that are 5 or more acres. They would see a slight increase in fees. Again, about 100, less than 100 on option 1, and then less than about $150 on option 2. So I do want to acknowledge that based on a fee structure change, there would be an increase in on those fee payers, again, based on these options that would be 5 or more acres. So Sharon, good morning. I think you have your hand up.
Yep. Hi, thank you. I think you just answered my question, but I just wanted to confirm that the industrial stormwater permittees fees are included in that line item of NPDES stormwater. So that is comprised of both the industrial and the MS4. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Noel, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I have a lot of questions this morning. If I remember correctly from the earlier slide, the stormwater fees, it looked like there was an expectation that those were decreasing. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, meaning that we're exceeding revenue by about, I think it's about $900,000 in the program. So yes, revenue is exceeding what we project to be expenditures roughly by about, I believe, $900,000.
So how does that play into this fee adjustment? Because you were saying that was supposed to be revenue neutral.
Well, it is. And so basically, yes, the slide here basically shows that that our fee setting budget for the stormwater is like 41.8. And our revenue forecast is about 42.7. And so it's exceeding. Now, when I said with the new structure itself, under the current structure, so when you look at like the revenue forecast of the 42 million, and that's comprised of the three programs: construction, municipal, and industrial. The industrial side is generating about 15.2 million. And so under the current structure. So if we do make a change and go to one of these options, we're still gonna, the way it's lined up, that we're still projected to collect 15.2 million for any of these new options. So option 1 or option 2. But it doesn't have any, again, impact to the current slide that you show here, that we see here. It's all built in. That 15.1 million is built into that 42.7 million.
Okay, but so there isn't any plan to adjust the fees to bring revenues and expenditures in line?
No, not at this point. We've done this in the past. I know what you're mentioning, basically saying, well, let's reduce stormwater fees, right? So we can to line it up, which basically means let's spread 900,000 to all stormwater fee payers. We've done that in years past. Now, what I will say is the main driver of the revenue exceeding has to do with the construction permits. In the last couple of years, we've definitely seen an uptick in construction in California, definitely an uptick in the number of stormwater construction permits. However, we've also seen that downsize in several years where, construction is gone down. So we haven't seen as many. So at this point, yes, our proposal is not to adjust, stormwater down. I will say back in March, I don't have the number in front of me, but I believe that number was closer to almost like $2 million over. So we're starting to see a little bit of a slowing down in the revenue that we're receiving from construction. So I'm a little hesitant of, making a big adjustment and then having to then potentially maybe raise fees on stormwater next year to, recover cost. Again, right now, staff's recommendation is just to not adjust stormwater fees and keep them the way they are at this point.
Okay, thanks.
So again, next steps, we'll be evaluating all the comments and feedback that we do receive from our MPDS stormwater industrial tiered fee schedule proposals and options. We'll provide an update at our August 3rd meeting on some of that information that we receive. And of course, looking at that point, we should have a proposal in place if we're going to move forward on one of the options. And again, Friday, June 23rd, which is a Friday. So if you'd like to comment, we definitely would appreciate the feedback. So let's just move to item number 6. Again, open discussion. If there's anything you'd like to discuss based on the information that we discussed already, or if there's any questions that you have, we'd be more than happy to help discuss that at this point.
Hey, Dave, this is Annalisa. Okay to say a few words?
Sure, please jump in.
Hi, I'm Annalisa Kihar. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director in the Division of Water Quality. So just want to appreciate all of the great comments that we received on the water supply strategy implementation BCP, as well as the comments regarding our ILRP ag realignment. So I oversee our groundwater programs in Division of Water Quality, and we are aware of the realignment effort with CDFA, and Brianna and Scott Couch are tracking and participating in that effort. So thanks, Robert, for that comment.
David, I just wanted to say a word or two about something that Bob brought up, and it was the irrigated ag program. And I'm sure Bruce has these same concerns that we're looking at this internally, at least the number of acres that we have in the program, and it does look like it's starting to plateau to us. So we've been talking to Annalisa's staff and some other staff throughout the regions about this. But eventually we're going to want to talk to all of you about it too, because Bob's right. If the acres are the same or start decreasing, either due to drought or flooding, whatever's going on in your area of California at the minute, fees will need to go up. So we don't know quite where we're going with this, because we obviously don't want fees to just increasing forever. But at the same time, we do have a program to support. So we're going to be reaching out to you here eventually to get your input on this and your ideas for how to manage this program, at least the fee aspect of it. So I just wanted to say that real quick, that just an acknowledgement that we are internally working on it. There's a lot of stuff that we do internally that you don't quite see it until it daylights out and we start going out to you and talking about it.
Thank you, John.
Sarah, you have your hand raised?
Yes, thank you. This is Sarah Lopez from the Central Coast third party group that we're like the coalition that helps our growers comply with the irrigated lands program. And I just wanted to request that if you are going to be moving into a period where you're soliciting additional stakeholder input, that the Central Coast please be included in that as well.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we'd like to hear feedback. So yes, you'd help us participate in this process. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dave, is it okay if I just add in one more thing? I did take a note. There was some good comments regarding the WDR program and the water supply strategy, PWISE. So I just wanted to also add, as part of the water supply strategy BCP, that did include some trailer bill language, allowing the water boards to assess fees for individual water reclamation requirement permits for the expanded time and complexity associated with including recycling water requirements in WDRs or NPDES permits. So because that trailer bill language is making its way through and it's part of the May revise, what we're thinking is that, many of our fees at the water boards are based on usage-based, capacity-based, complexity of a project. So there's just some options that we'll be thinking about. And so I believe that we'll be considering all of these factors in developing a water recycling fee structure. And so this is more a plug that we will be reaching out to the regulated community for input on developing a fee structure over the coming year. And so do want to see if others are interested in being part of that dialogue, to please reach out to us.
And then Annalisa, I think we've had this discussion also, is that looking at a timeline that we would be looking at the September 2024 board meeting on taking an option to the board for a new fee structure on water recycling. So that's why you don't see any proposals for this current cycle. And as Annalisa said, it's still going through the process. So And it'll take staff some time to kind of go through the process of help developing it, and of course, working with the outreach and workshopping the item and so forth for us to determine what would be the appropriate fees to cover this program. So let me ask staff, are there any questions through the webcast?
Yeah,
Email?
there's one email question from Maureen Daggett from ECM Services. She actually has a two-part question. Wants to clarify for the stormwater tiered fee structure, if the fee is based on total industrial acres. And then our second question is, what is the total number of acres currently regulated under the IGP?
So I don't when we look at the total number of acres, is that on our current slide? And if not, maybe Patrick can chime in here.
Dave, this is Patrick. I didn't add up the total acres currently for the industrial program, since it's a flat fee, so I didn't think to do that. So I don't know, but it's something we could easily find out and then get back to Maureen. But with that said, the total industrial acres, I don't know if you can bring that slide up, but the definition I had on my slide, that's what the total area of industrial acres is going to be based on. So hopefully this definition of the total area of industrial air activity exposed to stormwater answers Maureen's question.
And then Patrick, can you, I guess we'll reach out to Maureen, but we could also email Maureen this or the slide here with the definition also. So I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. Oh, Sharon has her hand up.
Yeah, just a really quick question about, I think what Annalisa said about, and you were elaborating that there would be a process over the next year to develop the new water recycling permit fees. I think Annalisa said something to the effect of we should reach out to them, but I'm not quite sure who's on point. And is it your group, David, or what Division of Water Quality, or just a collaborative effort? And is there something specific we should do if we're interested in that to, to be on that list?
Yes, there'll be a collaborative effort between Water Quality and Division of Administrative Services. And so some point we will be reaching out, putting some dates and gathering feedback and information, and whether it's, again, developing a list where, we'll ask you for dates and so forth. Most likely, and I'll pass this back on Lisa right now, most likely one of your staff in the program will probably be coordinating the dates and then working with us internally to kind of look at, developing the information. You want to add anything, Annalisa?
Yeah, I would say in the meantime, if there's some early interest, to please reach out to Laura McClellan. She is our program manager of our recycled water projects and efforts. That's LauraMcLellan at waterboards.ca.gov.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. So since there's no other questions, we'll just move to the next item, which of course is next steps, which leads us to our August 3rd next water quality fee stakeholder meeting. By then, we should have a budget signed and in place so we can evaluating the budget process based on the fiscal year 23 adopted budget. And we'll go ahead and kind of lay out all the information. We'll have the handouts out prior to the meeting, so there'll be kind of standard process posted on our web, and also through the Lyra's email list that are sent out. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Don't hesitate if there's any questions, or as you're looking through the data provided today, if you have any questions, please reach out to myself or Cassandra or John Russell. We'll be happy to meet with you and have further discussions. So I want to thank everyone taking the time to join us today, and we'll be talking soon, and everyone have a good rest of their week. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Dave.